How are you, Tristan? Can you hear me?
He's good. He's eating breakfast quickly before his appointment that he has 9 minutes yesterday.
Perfect. Kiera, I'm so sorry that we've had to change this podcast on and on.
No,
How
that's
are
okay.
you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing amazing. Are you guys in El Salvador right now?
No, we're just in Thermopolis, where Tristan lives. We're going to El Salvador on the 10th, I think, or the 11th.
Perfect. Of
Mm.
March?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. That's really nice. All
Yeah,
right.
very excited.
Kiera, so I've been following you for a minute now, for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think your content, at least, has given me a better understanding on quantum biology for
Mm-hmm.
to kind of understand what Jack Cruz shares. So it's like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So just for people who don't know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
can you share a little bit on your story? Like what got you to where you are today, what you do right now, and what you're sharing with the world.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kiera. I'm the owner of Kiera Wellness, which is a health coaching business, and I'm based in Australia. And my background is in registered nursing and psychology until 2020, when we all know what happened. And then I made the switch to become a decentralized clinician and educator in the space, which I'm very thankful to have come across the work of Dr. Jack Cruz and those of like mind. I feel very fortunate to have stumbled across that. And yeah, it's a little bit about me, I guess. Something that people don't know a lot about me is that I actually suffered with my own health concerns. So when I was in nursing school, very far through, I kind of got really, really sick because I got a scholarship to attend a university which was in the city. And so I grew up predominantly on the coastline, so always at the beach, always in nature. And then I
Mm,
moved into this big city, the capital city of my state, and I got really sick.
mm-hmm,
And for me, I kind of was the health girl. I kind of
mm-hmm,
thought I knew every single thing about health. I had studied all the textbooks. I got really good grades, and I couldn't heal myself, which was so frustrating for me. And I was asking, I was friends with my professors and lecturers, and I was asking them, what should I do? I have vertigo. I have brain fog. I have muscle spasms, muscle pain. I can't sleep properly. I'm fatigued. I have headaches. What can I do? And then the only solution I found through my educators was to go vegan. And
mm,
so I went vegan, and to no surprise, my symptoms actually got worse.
mm-hmm.
And then this kind of led me down the path of alternative medicine. And then I came across the work of Jack Cruz and I started implementing that into my life. And just 2 weeks in, I was feeling so much better. And so I kind of packed up my stuff and I quit university because it was around that time that I had the decision to comply or leave the system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the work of Jack Cruz and natural medicine just couldn't have come at a more perfect time for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, those two events unfolded and I moved back home and I started studying decentralized for 3 years.
How did you start to study decentralized medicine?
Yeah, so at the start, I didn't actually know who Dr. Jack Cruz was because I
Mm-hmm.
think it was one of his members told me just about circadian biology and how important it is. And so I started researching journal articles. Through university, I was taught how to do my own research. So I started pulling apart those and reading the work of some other people, Dr. Robert Obecker, who
Mm,
else? May Wen Ho, The Rainbow and the Worm. And it was about probably 10 months before I came across the work of Dr. Jack Cruz. And I was
mm-hmm.
like, oh, thank you. Like I finally found the source. And so straight away I joined his Patreon and I was
Mm.
completely dumbfounded. I was pulling up these blogs and I thought I was a smart woman. And I was reading 2 sentences into these blogs and I was like, I have no idea what this man's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
But
I'm
you
quite
kept studying that.
yeah, I'm quite stubborn. So I printed these all out in my room. Actually looked like I was at university. I had like lectures on the walls and I had bits of paper over here and I just had, highlighted things here and
Mm-hmm.
Googling all these words. And so slowly by slowly, I really started to understand these concepts. And so now I could read a blog post and I got to know his nuances and what he meant by
Mm,
certain phrases.
mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what quantize meant at that time. So that was a new word for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I started there, and then I kind of found actually 2.5 years into my journey, I was talking to a colleague of mine, Dr. Dalal Khan, and he said, have you watched the Nourish Vermont videos? And have you, I'm not sure if you watched them. Have you seen them?
I've seen like half of one.
Yeah, well, I definitely recommend you go read them.
Perfect.
And then I watched the Vermont videos and I was like, oh, wow. I wish that I
Mm-hmm.
had found these 3 years ago
Mm-hmm.
because it would have made my life so much easier. But now I had this really nice background of work that I've done for myself. So yeah, that's how I came to find his work. And then I found, obviously, the space has blown up a lot in the last, I guess, year. And I think I was one of the founding people in the space. But now, like, there's Carrie B Wellness, there's Sarah Kleiner Wellness, there's all these people talking about these topics, but they weren't really around when I started. So
Mm-hmm.
very thankful for them.
Love it. Are you currently still working in a hospital? I think you shared about it.
Yeah, no, not anymore. So I'm actually not allowed to work in the hospital because I'm not vaccinated.
Mm.
Well, actually, I think I am now. Yeah, I think 2 months ago they redeemed that. And I actually got an email from my university asking me to re-enroll to finish my
Mm.
placements. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a really hard point because I was like, oh, 6 weeks and I could be qualified. Should I do it? And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's overnight placement. There's no way that I'm going to be working overnight in a hospital. So
Mm-hmm.
no hospital work for me. And I'm officially self-employed. And yeah, so no more hospital work.
I love it. You're thriving. I'm really grateful to, I'm really young. Like I'm 17, and to be able to read your work, listen to your work, it's a blessing. Honestly, I'm very, very, very grateful that I get to grow up with that.
Oh,
So what are you currently creating? What are you sharing to the world currently?
yeah. I mean, I'm working on a lot of projects at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I just bought my first course, which was
Mm.
really based on education of surrounding the mitochondria and how the mitochondria actually function, because I feel like there's a lot of people now that are perhaps not in medical school, perhaps they work in finance, perhaps they're just working at the grocery store, doing whatever, and they're actually gaining an interest in health.
Mm.
And so for them, like, they don't have to go and do a course and spend thousands of dollars. They can simply take these little courses and truly understand how the mitochondria functions from a quantum perspective. And so I'm really excited to keep building out that platform. I have something super exciting in the works, which is a far bigger project. But that's going to make this education a lot more accessible for a lot of people. I have some really cool people involved on that project. So that's something to look out for in the future.
I love that. I think I read somewhere, I'm pretty sure on Twitter, that you avoided getting your appendicit, I don't know how to say it
Yeah.
correctly. You avoided getting removed. I think this is a
Mhm.
step people don't take. I think people, I mean, traditionally you get it removed if you're told to get it removed because you don't question anything. So can you talk me a little bit around through, what you did and why you took that decision? I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, of course. So one, this is not medical advice to anyone. Uh,
Yeah.
this is just my story. I don't recommend that you do this. Not medical advice, wink, wink. But yeah, so I had appendicitis when I actually left Brisbane. So when I left university, the story that I told you about earlier on, I
Mm-hmm.
actually got appendicitis. And so I woke up in the middle of the night and I was very sore. And I went to the hospital because I was very confused. And we got an ultrasound done and they told me that I had appendicitis. And I looked at the ultrasound and I could see that the swelling wasn't too bad.
Mm.
And so I decided to take my chances and go home because I had asked, and this was actually early on in my journey too. And I asked the doctor, I said, what does the appendix do? I don't really want to get it removed. I just had this innate feeling of not to do that.
Mm.
And so he said, oh, it does nothing. It's just a primal thing and we don't use it. And that was a red flag for me. And so I said, no, I'm going to take my chances. And that was actually really scary because he actually said to me, you're going to be infertile if you go home because your appendix is going to burst and then you're going to come back here in 24 hours and it's going to be embarrassing for you. And we're going to have to start this process all over again. And so I was kind of at that decision, do I follow mainstream medical advice or do I actually bet on myself and the knowledge that I have and try and heal
Mm-hmm.
this myself? And with working with clients, this is something that I also struggle with in terms of infection and things like this. Like, we can heal them naturally, but when we're put in these make or break, these really tough decisions, with these chronic illnesses, we always tend to kind of bounce back and rely on modern medicine. And so I really wanted to prove to myself and my clients that I could do this. And so I went home. I had to discharge myself against medical advice. And I actually wasn't into cold therapy then. So I just fasted. I laid in the sun. I meditated. I put intention into water. I did every single thing that I could. And within 4 days, I was doing cartwheels at my mum's house. And she was yelling at me because, Kiera, you just had appendicitis. Like, why are you doing cartwheels and handstands?
Yeah.
And then I got appendicitis a second time. The first time, I think that was just my nervous system re-regulating. Obviously, I was dumping a lot of toxins at that time too, because I'd finally been able to detox and eating good food. And so I got appendicitis a second time because I had started my business and it was just booming. I was just so busy and I was very stressed. And so I was inside all the time on my computer working, and I kind of dropped a lot of my own health practices, which I've learned not to do that now and really prioritize my own health. But so lo and behold, I got appendicitis because that's my weak spot. And so I utilized cold therapy, a ketogenic diet, and sunlight to heal myself. And so as a method of pain relief, I would go into my bathtub and I would put ice all over my stomach with a compression shirt on. And that would give me about 5.5 hours of pain relief, complete pain relief.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's actually quite dangerous, right? Because the pain's there to tell us when something's wrong. So when the pain gets worse, perhaps maybe you should seek medical advice or guidance. But for me, combined with the ketogenic diet and all the things I was doing, getting lots of sunlight, I just, and the circumstance, I knew why I had appendicitis. So I was okay with numbing that pain. It was just a pain I had to get through. And 3.5 days, I was again feeling better. And I now have my appendix still. I had no colds, no illnesses, nothing since then. And I think that was about maybe 7 months now.
I love that. Why did you go for ketogenic diet?
Yeah, because I really wanted to take the pressure off my body. I'm leptin sensitive, so it's really easy for me to burn fat as a fuel source. And it takes a little bit more energy for me to break down carbohydrates. And so combined with, when you're doing cold therapy as well, you want to be in that fasted ketogenic state because they're coupled. So cold stimulates, creates leptin sensitivity, which means that we're kind of telling our body that we're using fat as a fuel source. We're going to be eating a ketogenic diet because it's reminding our body of winter time.
Perfect.
So I just wanted to couple those together. I didn't want to bounce my blood sugar up and down. And I just wanted to give my body a lot of nutrients as well.
I love that. Well, what were those nutrients like? What would you eat?
Yeah, so I was eating liver. I don't really like to eat liver. I think it tastes so bad. But I was cutting that up very small and putting it into an ice cube tray. So I was just having bits of that throughout the day.
Frozen.
Just 2 pieces because it's obviously very nutrient dense. And I already had high redox. I was eating lots of stews with lots of fat in there as well, very hydrating for the body, and very low carb. I was still having some carbs, just very low, maybe like 20 grams of carbs with lunch.
Okay.
And I was only eating 2 meals a day. So I was eating at breakfast time around 5:30 and then again at about 1.
Perfect. Okay. So there are a couple things that you mentioned there that I want to talk about. Before that, I want, if you can help me explain to the people listening to this what quantum biology is. So I don't think it's really, certainly it wasn't really easy for me to understand. So can you explain a little bit on how this works? Why maybe this is such a hugely overlooked part of biology and health?
Yeah, of course. So Western medicine, it works on a model, which is the model of biochemistry. And we're told that's the foundation of health. But turns out that's not the foundation of health. And we are an electrical body and we are electrical beings. And so this electric foundation actually comes before the biochemistry, which means that depending on what's happening in our body electrically, our whole physiology, our whole biochemistry will change. And so first of all, quantum health is looking at the body as an open thermodynamic system, meaning that we don't just get energy from food. We're innately connected to our environment, and thus we always have a relationship with it. It's also looking at the body through the most microscopic scale that we know of, and this is also debated, but protons, neutrons, and electrons and energy flow, electrical charge, the flow of electricity through our body, rather than biochemistry being the main source and ATP being the main source of energy through the body. So that's kind of the basis of quantum health, I guess. There's also another side to quantum health, which really focuses on frequency. That's kind of a whole different discipline. There's kind of that Instagram space that's raise your frequency, quantum health, quantum healing. But I think that from this perspective, my perspective, it really is, and I guess it's kind of influenced by the dogma I received and the conditioning, more so science. So I'm more focusing on the physical body and things that we can actually, I guess, measure and kind of connects to everything we already knew in the literature. And so there's two sides to that. And that's a little bit about what quantum biology is. Really, it's just understanding that the body is electric. We are electric. And I love to use the analogy of a house. So if you build a house, and houses are built, in Australia at least, on a concrete slab. And so if you build a house that's on a foundation that's like this, and you build the walls up, the walls are going to be crooked, right? Because you built it on a wonky foundation. And so we can think of the foundation, that concrete slab, as our electrical body of quantum health. And you can think of the walls as the biochemistry. Now we have this wonky house because it was built on a wonky foundation. Now we can fix the walls. So I can take your thyroid panel, or I can take your lab results, and I can give you supplements and pharmaceuticals and bioidentical hormones to bring all that back into alignment to meet the centralized, I guess, data of what your biochemistry should look like. But then symptoms are still going to appear, right? Because you've got all this plumbing in the walls that's also connected to the foundation. So you're still going to have symptoms over time that are going to come back, and your biochemistry is going to keep fluctuating. Now, what we're going to do now with quantum health is we're going to fix the foundation. So we're going to fix the electrical body. Now, when that's fixed, what do you think happens to those walls? They turn this way. And so unless you really address that foundation of health, that electrical body first, there's no point even addressing the biochemistry, because that electrical body is always going to come before and affect that biochemistry. And that's what I see in my clinical work as well, especially with women with thyroid disorders, hypothyroidism. They'll be on NP or something, 100 milligrams. And then I'll just leave them on that to start with. I'll say, okay, we'll leave your medications alone. Let's just, for 4 months, let's just work on your electrical body. And then all of a sudden, 4 months in, their lab results get worse. Their TSH is so low. And that's because now we're regulating the body. The body's able to do what it needs to do. And now their medications are actually making things worse. And so that's when you start to address that biochemistry. You start to address those labs and the medications and supplements.
I love that. So the concrete, the electrical body, how do we get to work on that?
Yeah.
Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I guess your question is just, how do we care for our electrical body? Yeah. So we need to have a high redox, first of all, which comes from being connected to nature, having an electrical charge, having that net negative charge, which means that we need electrons in our body. And electrons can come from food, they can come from grounding, they can come from movement, piezoelectricity, all these things, melanin. And so we need to basically just be connected to our environment. Put simply, if you're bare feet on the ground, if you're living an ancestral lifestyle, your redox is going to improve. If you're eating real food, nutrient-dense food that's full of electrons, your redox is going to improve. Then you also need to have this light stay in your body, right? You need to actually be able to trap this. And this is when you hear people talking about, oh, your body battery is broken. I'm sure you've heard that. So more commonly than not, a good way to fix that is DHA. So DHA helps, which is an omega-3 fatty acid found in fish. It helps keep our cells tight and stops us from leaking light, and helps us create that DC electric current in our body. And so you need to be able to store that energy somewhere, though, that redox, that negative charge, those electrons, and utilize them in the right way. And so DHA really helps us do that. And that's why seafood is such a big component of the diet. Another thing is you need to be hydrated. So having this exclusion zone water, we know through the work of Gerald Pollack, I'm sure you're well versed on this. I think I've heard you talk about it a few times now, which is amazing at your age. The water in our body, for anyone who doesn't know, the water in our body isn't like, well, it can be, isn't like the water in a glass. it actually becomes influenced by light. So depending on what light you're around, your exclusion zone is this water is going to transform, or perhaps not, into something completely different. But we want our water in our body to be in the fourth phase, which means that it's charge separated. So what the light does, what the infrared light does, is it charge separates this water, this metabolic water, into a zone of positive and negative. So we really do have all these electrons pushed up against proteins or hydrophilic surfaces, and they kind of kick out all the protons. The electrons are up against the hydrophilic surfaces and they kick out all the protons. So they have this gradient. And when you have a positive and a negative together, this really builds a body battery. And so Dr. Gerald Pollack, this is actually pretty cool. He got this device that was made by Gilbert Ling, and they were these tiny electrodes, and he put the positive in one side and the negative in the other side of the water, and it was enough to power an LED light bulb. And so that's what's happening inside of you. You're connected to nature when you have this light on your body. And so if you're living inside all the time and you're around non-native EMFs, because Gerald Pollack put a Wi-Fi monitor in his lab next to the exclusion zone, and it completely diminished. So Wi-Fi and modern technology is really stopping us from tapping into this abundant amount of energy that we have in our body, which is essentially free from our environment. And now we have a generation of kids who have AirPods in their ears. You're wired now, which is great. They have these Fitbits, continuous glucose monitors, all these things, playing games all the time inside, and they're wondering why they're suffering with fatigue. And it truly is because they're not connected to this source of free energy that they otherwise would have been.
Yeah. So why are non-native EMFs such a huge problem? Because I can talk about this to people who are around me, and the phone in your pocket, that's not doing any good, but I'm not feeling anything when I have my phone in the pocket. So it's like overlooked, right? So why is this a problem?
Yeah, well, it's a big problem for a few reasons. And also, they don't really, I think I have this theory. I want to talk about this first about why you don't, like, you have the phone in the pocket and then you don't feel anything. But my clients and myself, when I removed these things from myself, so when I removed my Fitbit, when I stopped using my phone all the time, when I was constantly hardwired, when I went and used my phone again, I could actually feel the impact it was having on my hand. And so I feel like it's this tolerance that we've built up, or we've just numbed out this pain because we're so used to feeling it. But when we take ourselves out of a negative environment, and this isn't just about health, it can be emotional as well. People that are in horrible relationships, they don't actually realize it's horrible until they're actually out of it, and then they go back in it and they're like, oh, I can see now. And I feel we can't have that relationship with technology. It's not until we leave it alone and then we come back, we're like, oh, okay, this is actually making me feel worse.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
What it's like to feel good, right? And so what was the other part of your question? Oh, why non-native EMFs are so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a cup of tea this morning, so I'm kind of like caffeine down.
Yeah.
So crazy. Non-native EMFs. Okay, so something that people don't talk a lot about is the effect that non-native EMFs have on our mitochondria. So one, we have these voltage-gated calcium channels in our mitochondria. So you can think of our mitochondria, and we have these little channels in them. And so that regulates calcium in and out of the cell.
Okay.
And so calcium's not bad inside the cell. It's a signaling molecule. So it signals information to our mitochondria, but it is bad when we have too much inside the cell. And so non-native EMFs really open up these voltage-gated calcium channels and allow in a lot of calcium. And so what this does inside the cell, and so what this means is that we have, things in place. Our immune system comes in and takes out the calcium. But when it's chronically open, because you're around non-native EMFs for a long period of time, the mitochondria actually give up their position of creating energy, of tunneling electrons for your body, and it'll start to sequester that calcium. And then
this is because the mitochondria is overwhelmed because of the calcium?
Yeah, because if there's too much calcium inside the cell, it's a bad cell. You need to take it out. And so to try and, I guess, improve cell function, the mitochondria will kind of jump in. It's kind of like if you're a boss, and if I'm at a building site and I'm the boss and I'm telling all of my little workmen to go and to fix this hole, fix this water leak and fix the hole, and they're not doing a good job, and then I go, I'll just go do it myself.
Okay.
So that's kind of the mitochondria is like, okay, this is big trouble now. I'm going to give up what I'm doing because getting rid of this
Okay.
calcium this increase in calcium is going to kill me anyway. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter if I have energy or not. And so it will sequester that calcium, which is not good. So then we have a cell that's bad, needs to go through apoptosis or autophagy, and get
Okay.
removed, repaired, or be taken out completely and go through cell suicide. Now, if you're around a lot of blue light, you actually don't go through those processes. Or if you're around a crappy light environment, autophagy and apoptosis are probably rare for you. And
Mhm.
so that's those two combined, the toxic environment and then your inability to take out that bad cell, are combined together in a modern lifestyle. And so therefore you have all of these things in your environment that are ruining your cell function. And then you're also around artificial lighting that stops you from being able to get rid of those cells.
Mhm.
And so our cells are replicating all the time. And so those bad cells now can actually replicate and form more of themselves, which puts us at more risk of developing tumors.
Mhm.
That's a big problem. Another problem with EMFs is that they actually clog up the cytochrome 4, the complex 4, and the electron transport chain, which is where we create water, cytochrome 4. So it actually produces something that nitric oxide inside the cell, which goes to complex 4, and it kind of sits where oxygen is meant to bind to create water. And so now we actually can't create water inside the cell either,
Okay.
which means that even if you're around good light, we don't actually have that metabolic water to produce that metabolic water to turn into exclusion zone water because it's so clogged up. We're actually not producing water. And then again, apoptosis, autophagy to get rid of that cell. And,
Mhm.
I urge anyone to try this. This is why non-native EMFs are just so dehydrating, because they're really stopping this cytochrome, this complex, from producing water. And then at the same time, we go back to the work of Gerald Pollack. If you put a Wi-Fi router or exclusion zone next to the exclusion zone, it actually diminishes the exclusion zone itself.
Mhm.
And so there's two sides to that coin, I guess. And now I think the biggest change for me is when I started hardwiring my devices, and then I would actually feel good. I could actually work on my laptop for a few hours. I felt hydrated still, and I could take my light breaks. But when I'm not hardwired, I feel very dehydrated, and
Mhm.
that's actually the physical symptom of what's happening deep down. And so I think a great challenge for anyone listening to this podcast would be to go hardwire your laptop, or maybe stay off
Mhm.
it for 2 days. Actually, no, use your laptop hardwired, keep hydrated, and then unhardwire your laptop and see how you feel. And I think you'll be quite surprised when you
Mhm.
actually tap into your body. You'll really feel the dehydrating effects of the technology.
Yeah, that is so interesting. The cell opening up to calcium because of non-native EMFs is very new.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to go through that rabbit hole. Really
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm
Some
going to do a post on it soon because it is something that's not talked about.
Perfect. No, absolutely. So something else you mentioned with your appendicitis was cold thermogenesis.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge today. Everyone wants to get on a cold plunge. Everyone does their cold showers every day. But this side of quantum biology through cold thermogenesis is obviously, again, super overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain a little bit why the cold is so good for us and it's important to embrace the cold in the side of quantum biology, creating your own light?
Mm-hmm.
That's such an interesting topic too.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, cold therapy is massive in the health space at the
Mm-hmm.
moment, and for good reason. It's also gaining a lot of, I guess, negative opinions as well, because
Mm-hmm.
people think that it's a hormetic event, that it just induces a stress response and then you feel really good after. And they're saying that it's just another addiction for people. It just releases these feel good hormones, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what cold therapy is. But they don't innately understand that our body is a quantum machine. They don't understand the body from a quantum lens. And to be honest, it's something that I'm still studying myself.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I researched and what I've now utilized is, one, it's great for pain relief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this, because these topics are so complex that I
Mm-hmm.
kind of lack the vocabulary to give them the right, I guess, praise. But cold is it's just so much more than a hormetic event and something that makes you feel good. So one, it produces, and something I use a lot in my clinical work, is it produces rapid leptin sensitivity. So I'm not
Okay.
sure if you've heard of leptin resistance. That's
Mm-hmm.
so pandemic, everyone's leptin resistant. I think it's quite common if you're in the quantum space to know about that and what that is. And so when you're trying to gain leptin sensitivity, this pathway of cold really is a great way to do that. So one, it's great for weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's also great for inducing good thyroid health, which
Mm-hmm.
people actually think that cold is something that you wouldn't do if you have poor thyroid health or your hormones are not functioning optimally. But turns out if you do cold the right way, it's actually the best thing you can do to,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, create proper hormone signaling in the body. And so cold's great for hormonal health. It just needs to be done the right way. Another thing that's cold's great for is for just really tapping into that fat burning, that ketogenic pathway, which then ties in with leptin sensitivity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it also works on a quantum event, in meaning that it slows down electrons in our body and it kind of helps us produce, I guess, light inside of us. And so
Mm-hmm.
everyone kind of thinks that we need to be out in the sun all the time and that you need to travel from, wintertime in your location to
Mm-hmm.
the equator to get as much sun as possible. But they forget that just like light needs dark, you need to have sleep and you need to have daytime, our body actually needs those coupled oscillations too. We actually need cold and we need heat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you've lived a life that's completely devoid of sunlight, and this is why it's so great that you're so young and you're getting into this now, is because you have so many years, like even on me, you have 10 years on me almost to just get all this light inside your body. So if you're sick, perhaps maybe you do need to optimize light. So maybe a trip to Mexico or something in the middle of winter is probably good for you. But once you're in that state of homeostasis, you actually can go back and you can thrive, I believe, if you're utilizing the cold side of your environment as well. And so getting cold, it optimizes our body to suit that environment. And so our
Mm-hmm.
body works on input signals, and my mitochondria work on input signals. And so the input signal of temperature controls how our mitochondria are functioning. So
Mm-hmm.
when we get cold, we're actually telling our body to upregulate cytochrome 2, which is
Mm-hmm.
our fat burning complex, and downregulate cytochrome 1, which is where carbohydrates go in.
Okay.
So if you think of this electron transport chain, we have complex 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the ATPase at the end. 1 is predominantly where carbohydrates get fed into that electron transport chain, because this extra step is because we actually need more steps to strip the carbohydrate or to strip that
Mm.
electron that has
Okay.
the high solar yield of light. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it has an extra step, is because there's more light energy and we need to knock it out, into
Okay.
our water network. Now, fats don't. They go into complex 2. And if you think about that from a winter perspective, if we put fats, if we're skipping a step and there's only 3 places to tunnel in our mitochondria, that's actually saving us energy because we don't have to tunnel as far. We don't have that extra step to jump. So we're actually saving energy. And so cold is upregulating cytochrome 2. Now, this is where also, I'm not sure if you want to touch on this, but while eating carbohydrates are actually bad in the winter if they don't grow near you, is because that cytochrome is not upregulated. And
Sure.
so if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
put carbohydrates into this machine that's being told by your environment, cold, 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 winter, no UVB, no carbohydrates, you're basically trying to force start something, and it's going to create reactive oxygen
Mm-hmm.
species. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what this reactive oxygen species is basically is a lost electron, and these electrons like to
Mm-hmm.
be in pairs. And so this electron is now going to be reactive. It's going to create inflammation. It's going to be trying to find a pair. And it doesn't matter where it gets that from. It might pull it from the lipid bilayer. It might pull it from the complex itself. But it's basically going to cause cellular inflammation. And then you need apoptosis or autophagy to step in and fix that. And so this cold really is signaling to our mitochondria to function optimally in our environment. And then the heat does the exact same thing, but reverse. So it's going to upregulate that cytochrome 1 and downregulate 2 and all the things depending on
Mm-hmm.
what's happening in your mitochondria and in your body. There's a lot of variables. So cold just goes far beyond this, feel good producing effect. It does so many things for our
Mm-hmm.
body. breeds leptin sensitivity. And in a world where we have these non-native EMFs, getting cold really allows us to undo a lot of that damage and become more homeostatic.
Okay. That point of homeostasis, I think, is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
Something I think you touched on a little bit a couple minutes ago, but not really, about frequency. And this is something you've posted about, which is the connection between emotions and frequency, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So this is a big topic, I think, and something that I love to delve into. I mean, I was never really that spiritual until I found quantum, and then I was kind of realized a few things that were true that I didn't really believe in prior. But our frequency is a real thing, and quantum entanglement is a real thing. And this is why I believe we're so disconnected from ourselves, from spirit, from God, from each other, is because we have so much quantum noise in our environment, which means we have lots of different frequencies happening. We have lots of different people on different frequencies. We constantly are being fed different frequencies from the music we listen to, from the shows that are on TV. We're constantly be given all these external input signals, which just create noise in our physiology, around us, on a quantum level. And so it really disconnects us from who we are and our purpose and our own thoughts and feelings. We're so disconnected from ourselves. And so via limiting your quantum noise, you're really able to tap into your own thoughts, your own feelings, and really manifest a life that's true to you, and really tap into those senses that we think aren't really there anymore, like intuition. You know, there's the notion that people actually were able to communicate via telepathy. And I think that this is actually true in an environment where we actually have really low quantum noise. And so I know this from personal experience as well. When I was living on my mum's property, I was having a lot more, I guess, intuitive events in the sense that, and these are little things too. And I feel like the more you use your intuition, the stronger it gets.
Of
But
course.
yeah, I guess an example of this is one day I was like putting my keys. I was like, I need to put my keys in a safe space because my nephew will grab them and they'll be lost again. I went to put them on top of the fridge. And then my brain said to me, you're not going to remember that you put them there. And I said, no, of course I'm going to.
Yeah.
Like I literally said that to myself. And then literally that afternoon, I was like, where did I put my keys? And I was looking for so long from where I put my keys. One day, Tristan and I were walking. We're actually in Iceland. And we rented this big caravan van. It was great, very expensive. And so we were walking, I think it was like 2 a.m. in the morning from these hot springs. And the keys are in my backpack and Tristan was carrying it. And then my brain just said to me, keys. And I was like, oh, where's my keys? Oh, they're in the backpack. And then I literally put my hand out onto the backpack to I guess, touch it because I know the keys are in the pocket. And they literally fell out onto my hand.
Wow.
And so I feel like these events become more and more so the more that I clean up my quantum noise in my environment, you know, and this can be as simple as, I think a big one nowadays is really just regulating your social media. So unfollowing everyone. That was a really big thing for me. So you need to unfollow so many people. Like, what's the point in following all these people? Because you're not going to retain any information. Like you're literally just, and I know because this was, especially if you're into health, it's like, do this, do that. This is the best. No, this is the best. This person sucks. This person's great. Noise, 100 people all at once.
Yeah.
And then you're like, nervous system so activated. And then you're wondering why you're not healing because you're just so disconnected from yourself. You have so much quantum noise. And so I think for me, a big helpful thing was just finding 3 people that I really trusted. And so for me, that was Jack Cruz, Dr. Jalal Khan, and I can't remember I think it was like my best friend or something. And so for like a year, I only followed 3 people. And that was the best thing. It was so nourishing. And it also allows us to have proper connection with people because the more you focus on people, just one person, the stronger your connection will get. So that's super helpful. You don't want to have your energetic body being tied to all these random people on Instagram because even though it's an online space, you really are still connecting with those people's souls and their energy every time you see them. And so then you're able to think your own thoughts as well. And then your
Mhm.
dopamine starts to regulate. You're doing all the right light environment stuff. You're not having all these constant inputs of short form dopamine giving content. And then
Mhm.
you can start to concentrate more. You can start
Mhm.
to actually have things come to you and thoughts come to you that are your own and tap into that intuitive sense.
Mm.
Um, Now that's a big one in
That is
terms
huge.
of emotions as well, which is kind of, I went off on a tangent, sorry. In terms
Don't worry.
of emotions have different frequencies. And so
Mhm.
whether you're feeling joy or gratitude or anger and hurt and pain and lust, they're low frequency feelings. And
Mhm.
so if you're focused on those feelings and you're feeling that, whether you're watching a movie and you're crying because you're, connected to that
Mhm.
character or whatever it is, or you're reading a book or you're listening to music about, I don't know, what do men listen to these days? Like, get money, get women,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
Soldier Boy, I don't even know who you listen to anymore, but,
Yeah.
I'm so old. But that is giving a frequency of lust, of material possession, and then you're actually
Mhm.
tapping into that, and so when you're singing along to that, God says to us, "We speak words into existence." So if
You
you're
were
speaking that hurt, and same for women, songs about, breaking up with your boyfriend and being cheated on and all these things, although it kinda creates a solace to you because you feel heard and you feel connected, you're actually breeding more of that into your life. And so we need to really be careful with our words, what we're listening to, because all these run on frequencies. And when we connect with that, that actually is impacting us, impacting our frequency, and then pulling more of that into our sphere and our life. And so I think the best thing you can do is turn off your TV, turn off like literally all the external inputs, and just really tap
Mhm.
into who. When I started to listening to, I guess, frequency music, and turning off these modern day songs, my life really changed. It had a really big impact on me. And so your frequency is
Mhm.
something that's very real, and something
Mhm.
that you need to protect. And I think a key takeaway for anyone, just to finish up this topic quickly, is that if you're feeling down in the dumps, or you're feeling like, you're feeling really negative, or everything's bothering you, the best way to upgrade your frequency and actually get yourself out of that hole is to think of things
Mhm.
that make you grateful. Think of your
Mm.
family, think of a warm soup, think of sunlight, or anything that makes you feel gratitude, and your life will instantly change. It's always when you're grumpy that you stub your toe on the end of the bed.
Mhm.
Mm.
And you'll do it again, and you'll get even more angry.
And then you'll make
Yeah.
lunch and you'll cut your finger, and that's just how it
Mhm.
goes. Hmm.
Yeah. Gratitude. Is there any specific practice that you do to connect more to gratitude?
Yeah, so in the mornings, well, not so much now that I'm traveling, but at home, every morning I would wake up and I'd have a cup of water with some salt, and I would just hold it. And this sounds
Mm.
so crazy, and old me would be like,
No.
"What are you
Mhm.
talking about?" Just putting
Yeah.
the intention in the water. So I would actually think of like what makes me grateful, and I would always have my little nephew just running around the farm come into my mind, and so I would think of him,
Mm.
and then I'd smile and I'd have that warm feeling, and then I'd think of my family and beautiful meals with them, and putting that gratitude into my glass and then drinking it is definitely a practice that I was doing every single day, and I need to get back
Mhm.
into. So thanks for the reminder.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing. You mentioned a little bit, there's a lot to unpack on frequencies and emotions, but you mentioned a
Mhm.
little bit about God. Do
Mhm.
you mind sharing, what's your current understanding about God? And I asked that question like that because I feel like the more we connect to that, the more we understand it, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if you mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. So I wasn't raised in a Christian household.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother was Christian, so when I was a teenager, she would take me to youth group and to church and these things. And for me, it just never really resonated. And now I think that God is something that's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me, I feel like Christianity has gone so far from where we were meant to be. I mean, purely from just the fact that churches are inside with artificial lighting and all these things, like, that's not what God gave us. God gave
Mm-hmm.
us trees and nature, and so I think if you want to worship God and connect with source, which is your environment and life and frequency and the Schumann's resonance and all these things, that's going to bring you closer to God. And in terms of pleasing God, which Christians
Mm.
always say it's important to worship God and these things,
Mm-hmm.
I think that actually going outside and appreciating what God gave you is a great way to connect. And so whether you think that God is whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish or whatever your belief system is, whether you believe in source or the universe or whatever you like to call it. And in my posts, I always say God/universe/source/whatever your thought process is there. Going outside, quantum health, connecting just makes sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're actually connecting in with these things, we're connecting in with God's frequency, God's vibration. We're becoming more coherent with our natural environment, which is God, because God
Mm.
created us and God
Mm-hmm.
created the tree outside and the snow. And so whether God is light, God is frequency, God is all these things, really I see God as our innate connection with the natural world. And so
Mm.
through connecting with what God gave us, that brings us closer to God, closer to ourselves. Because I believe that, well, we are all God. We all have God inside of us. And so when we become more coherent, we're able to have a deeper connection with God. And I'm really excited to keep exploring that and see where that takes me, because I feel like personally, like I still have a lot of work to do in terms of
Mm-hmm.
just upgrading my frequency and my health after 26 years of not doing so. And I'll definitely keep you updated. But it's definitely
Yeah.
interesting. I know that a lot of people in the quantum space, they kind of have God is light in
Mm-hmm.
their bios. And whether it's actually a man in the sky, I'm not sure. But I know that he wouldn't be angry about you getting outside and appreciating what he gave you.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and thank you for sharing.
No, it's
Uh,
okay.
so I know. So for my last question, Kiera,
Mhm.
it's kind of related to this. What brings you most joy in life?
Oh, that's a good question. What brings me most joy in life? What brings me
Yes.
most joy in life is helping my family,
Mm.
being able to give them stability, being able to give them advice, leading by example, helping my sister, cooking them a beautiful meal, teaching them about
Mm.
health, really
Mm-hmm.
giving back and bringing my family from a space of lack and a space of a negative mindset, a space of having a really bad relationship with their environment, to now being able to influence them in a positive way and kind of heal my family and heal my generational lineage. I think that is what brings me most joy in life.
Did you always have that joy to take care of your family?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my mum was a single mum
Mm.
and my dad was out of the picture for a long time. And I have two siblings, and I'm the eldest. And so I feel like my mum kind of depended on me a lot emotionally
Mm.
to help her. And I didn't really realize this until later in life. You know, I think I got a scholarship at university for like a laptop, and then I went and spent it on new bed sheets for my family the next day, and I was so
Mm.
excited. So having
Mm-hmm.
this innate drive to just provide and fix my family, I felt like is something that was definitely ingrained in me through my environment. Um, but now it's definitely not a space of through a space of codependence, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that kind of is, I was in that space of codependency. And now it's more a space of leading by example, of educating, of giving them the tools to fix their life
Mm.
when they're ready. I don't want to change them. I love them exactly how they are.
Mm.
Being able to be like fixing myself, my health, my mentality, uh, allows me to stand in my own power and really just create a safe space for them of being like, here's the information when you need it. And really just watching them thrive just makes me so happy. You know, my sister, she took my advice and didn't get the thing in 2020. And my mom now just started wearing blue light blockers a couple of
Mm.
weeks ago, which is
Mm-hmm.
exciting. My brother recently had a child. He's beautiful. So they're implementing a lot of the nourishment practices with his diet and things like this, letting him chew on bones, developing his jaw. And
Mm-hmm.
this is just really nice to see my family come from a lineage that was somewhat broken to now being a really strong collective of good energy.
That is so beautiful. And that giving you the information for until you're ready, that resonates a lot. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I I kind of needed to hear that because sometimes I get a little bit like I lose patience maybe. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, shit, your life could be so much better. You could
Mm-hmm.
not be seeing these patterns repeat and repeat and repeat if you could
Mm-hmm.
just do this, you know? So that's really special. Yeah.
It can get frustrating, and I have a lot of clients who say, oh, my husband won't do this, or my family, they just don't understand. And I'm like, because they're not ready. Like,
Mm.
it's everyone in life has their own journey, and who are we to
Mm-hmm.
say, who am I to say this
Yeah.
is how you live your life. And if you don't live your life that way, well, then you're done. You know, the light we see in others is the light we see in ourselves. And at the end of the day, Alfonso, like everything that I'm saying could be wrong. Like literally every single thing that I've said today, I could just be delusional. I don't know. We don't actually know anything, and we probably won't until we die. And, you know, that's free will. That's free will. And you have the free will to make any decision you want and live the life the way that you want. Then you have to be okay with the consequences that come from that, or living out possible consequences that come from that. And so for me, it's not about telling people how to live, what to do, how to think. It's just like, hey, this is what I've done that's helped me. This is what I think I know. And if it helps you, well, then that's great. And if it doesn't, well, I hope you find what helps you. And so I think giving people free will, allowing them to tap into themselves is important. And, you know, in today's environment, people actually don't, in terms of frequency, people actually don't understand because they're so low in, and it's just not coming from a space of negativity at all or judgment, but they're so low in dopamine, and I was too. So I wasn't even having any health, you know, real health, alternative, historic things come up in my feeds even, or make way in my life. I wasn't coming across any of these people because I wasn't on that frequency. And so I was just tapped into like this frequency of the matrix and the plan. And so that's what I was getting. And so it wasn't until I slowly started putting in these little things, blue light blockers, clearing out my news feed, being really careful of who I spent time around, studying, putting in work, proof of work, that I started upgrading my frequency. And then I started coming into contact with more people, and I started understanding concepts that I never ever knew about 6 months ago. And so it's little by little, but you get there because every little thing will help them in the big scheme of things.
Beautiful, Kiera. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your wisdom. I really appreciate today.
No, that's totally fine. Thanks for having me on it. It was a great chat.
Yeah, thank you.